Okay, it's a fresh new day, start to the fresh new week, and you're watching Power Breakfast from the Mumbai News Center. I'm Sonal Bhutra, and it is not looking very good as far as the global markets are concerned. Hawkish comments coming in from US Fed Chair Jerome Powell, and that is something which is impacting the Asian markets as well. And remember, US markets saw cuts of 3 to 4% in Friday's trading session, and that is something that we are seeing in the Asian markets as well, with Nikkei sitting with cuts of around 3%. We have Taiwanese index sitting with cuts of 2.5%. The Kospi2 is down by 2.2%, and across the board there's a lot of selling, a bout of selling that we are seeing across the global markets. The Taiwanese index down 2.5% and the Hang Seng is down 1%. As a result of all this and the comments that came in from the US Fed Chair, the SGX Nifty is indicating that the start for our own markets, well, that could be deep in the red. It's a 2% downtick that the SGX Nifty is indicating. It's almost a 400-point cut at that 17,273 mark. This is as far as the SGX Nifty's levels are concerned. So let's talk about where all the action happened in the US markets. Wall Street ended Friday's trading session sharply lower in a broad-based sell-off following Fed Chair Jerome Powell's remarks in Jackson Hole. The Dow Jones tumbled 1,000 points. The S&P 500, it was down over 3.5%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite nearly 4% lower. CNBC's Mike Santoli gets us a wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
Major averages closing lower across the board after Fed Chair Powell's warning in Jackson Hole. The Dow plunging 1,000 points on the day, closing down 3%. The S&P dropping just over 3%, and the Nasdaq taking the biggest hit, finishing off by nearly 4%. Fed Chairman Jay Powell spooking investors, warning of pain ahead as the central bank continues to battle inflation. In his annual policy speech at Jackson Hole, the Fed chief warned that higher interest rates will persist for some time and that central bankers will not attempt to loosen monetary policy too early. Due to significant material cost increases, Ford is hiking the starting prices of its electric Mustang Mach-E crossover by over $8,000 for some models. The Mach-E is just the latest electric vehicle to face a price increase as raw material costs for EV batteries more than doubled throughout the pandemic thus far. That is the action from the U.S. market. Back to you in Mumbai.
All right, that's the global market action. But of course, we'll talk about the big global market cue that came in on Friday. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, in his Jackson Hole speech, warned that he expects the central bank to continue raising rates in a way that will cause some pain to the U.S. economy. He also affirmed the Fed will use all its tools forcefully to bring down inflation. CNBC's Steve Leisman filed this report.
Where there was a pretty stunning speech from the Fed chairman. And I think markets were expecting something more dovish from Fed Chair Jay Powell. That's the best way to explain the reaction. Instead, the chairman, in that much anticipated Jackson Hole speech, took strides to say the Fed is going to be resolute in its fight against inflation, even warning about the possibility that it could cause pain to some businesses and households.
While higher interest rates, slower growth, and softer labor market conditions will bring down inflation, they will also bring some pain to households and businesses. These are the unfortunate costs of reducing inflation. But a failure to restore price stability would mean far greater pain.
Stocks sold off hard after the speech. In a way, Powell was answering the question that markets have been wondering about, what the Fed would do if there was a recession, and his answer did not please markets. It appears to be that he would keep raising rates. Powell made a specific point about warning markets against pricing in a reversal in policy too quickly.
Restoring price stability will likely require maintaining a restrictive policy stance for some time. The historical record cautions strongly against prematurely loosening policy.
So for others listening to Fed speak this week from Jackson Hole and before the conference, Powell's comments wouldn't have been that particularly surprising or newsworthy. The Fed has been speaking almost unanimously that it's not going to relent in policy until there's convincing evidence that inflation is headed toward its 2% target. Instead, the market may have been engaging in what you might call wishful thinking, and Powell said back to them, Dom, the beatings will continue until morale improves.
Okay, dovish comments were expected, but hawkish commentary is something that spooked the markets overnight. But with that, we'll get you some important reactions on Chairman Powell's speech and the market reaction coming in from former Fed Governor Randy Rosner and IMF's Geeta Gopinath. Listen in.
What is the message that he wants to give? we're going to fight inflation and we're going to keep at it even if the economy slows. He talked about how it may be some time that they will need to keep rates in a restrictive area. He talked about a sustained period of below trend growth, which of course could include a recession. He really wanted to try to get the markets to believe that they're going to raise rates, get to around 4% or so, plus or minus 25, 50 basis points, and they're going to keep them there.
I think what it signaled was recognizing that there are trade-offs in doing this and bringing inflation down. But he did make the point that, yes, there will be short-term pain, but if you don't bring inflation down durably, then there's going to be much more longer-term pain, and that's what we want to avoid. Extent of the slowdown that this will require to bring inflation down is still unclear, but I do think what he said today was that, we have to keep our eyes squarely on bringing inflation down.
Impact our own markets. We have a research team joining in to tell you just that. We have with us Ekta and Nigel joining us today. First up, Ekta, let me come across to you. What is the market setup looking like today?
Well, you all have discussed the biggest Q already, and that was basically what took place in the US on Friday, where Powell has warned of some pain ahead at the Jackson Hole Symposium speech, and the Dow closed 1,000 points lower. The September 20th Fed meet is now going to be in focus, and also the markets are likely to be repricing the idea of cuts eventually, which the street was contemplating at one point in time. The European markets closed low on Friday. The Sensex and the Nifty probably got a whiff of it because they had snapped their 5-week winning streak on Friday. The markets were off the highs, but they ended in the green in what was a volatile session. And the FIIs net sold around 51 odd crores. Let's see whether that turns into a trend and whether this is a start of further selling pressure. But nonetheless, there was a small sell figure which came in from the FIIs. DIIs compensated handsomely by buying around 453 odd crores. Asia in the red at this point in time. SGX also indicating a down start for our markets. And Brent crude, there are always fears that a recession will result in lower commodity prices, but that doesn't seem to be the case this morning. $101 per barrel on Brent crude, as the OPEC has signaled that they might cut output, so that's probably weighing on Brent prices at this point.
Okay, those are the market cues, and it will remain about markets as well today, Ekta, but a lot of stocks will be in focus as well.
Well, surprisingly, there's a lot of news to reckon with today. So like you mentioned, it is the Reliance Industries AGM, which will be 2 p.m. onwards. So that the street will be squarely focused on in terms of cues. Ultratech Cement, they've commissioned a cement capacity in Uttar Pradesh. Tata Steel has signed an MOU with the Punjab government. NHPC had earlier signed an MOU with the Himachal Pradesh government. So now they've said that an implementation agreement has been signed between the two parties. Cipla, Glenmark, Jubilant, Pharmova, all of these stocks will be in focus on account of US FDA regulatory action. IR, especially Cipla, I would watch out for quite keenly. IRCTC e-tender for appointment of consultant for data monetization has been withdrawn. RITES, their JV's got an order worth around 361 crores. SRF has commissioned a project in Indore, which is a total capex of 446 crores. GMR is going to consider some amount of fundraising. And Rolex Rings, there is a PE firm, Rivendell, which has sold its entire stake. So that stock might be in focus too.
That is a long list, Ekta. Thank you so much for joining us with all those details. And finally, Nigel is joining us with all the cues from the F&O space this morning. Hey, Nigel.
Well, morning, Sonal. Before we get to the cues, wishing you, I hope you had a great birthday, and belated wishes from all of us here at CNBC-TV18 weekend should have been special for you.
Thank you.
But getting to the market action there, in terms of flows, the FIs, well, they were sellers, but you need to adjust for the Rolex Rings large trade. So stripped of that, actually, the FIs would have been buyers yet again, though the buying quantum has come down substantially. In the F&O market, the FIs, they covered some shorts, so they continue to remain net short on the index. Close to around 61% of their positions are on the short side. On the option side, well, they're buying calls as well as puts, and they're writing more calls than puts, telling you that at higher levels, you could see some bit of resistance that will creep in. A couple of strikes that are very active. The 17,700 call has the highest open interest. It was very, very active. Premium at around 85 rupees odd. That's telling you that's the bears. They believe 17,800, 18,000, that range belongs to them. On the downside, though, the 17,500 put was very active. Now, important to note that today we'll be starting below that 17,400 odd level. So if there is a lot of unwinding at this strike, that's telling you the bulls are throwing in the towel. So keep an eye out on that one. What are the levels you're looking at? Remember, our markets were preempting some bit of a disappointment, whether it was earnings, whether a domestic or global factor. We've got the global disappointment because of the hawkish Fed. We've corrected close on 450 points from the recent peak. That's just in the last few days odd. The recent low is at around that 17,350. The 20 DMA as well is what we'll break. Now, the SGX Nifty is suggesting that we're likely to start off in that vicinity of around 17,250 to around 17,300 odd. If we start out here and if we can hold on to the first hour lows, which is extremely crucial, maybe risk reward favors the bulls at around this mark of around 17,250. Not a day to be brave, but in case you want to, then that's the crucial mark you're looking at, 17,250 to around 17,300. Back to you.
Okay, all right, Nigel, Ekta, thank you so much for joining us and prepping us up for this very crucial day ahead. Let's talk about the other big cue for today. The 45th Annual General Meeting of Reliance Industries will take place this afternoon. Nisha Pudar is joining us on what to expect from the mega event. Nisha?
Let's take a look at the big picture. Now, the AGM has been a big affair for the conglomerate Reliance Industries since time immemorial, and the promoters have often made some high-voltage announcements to its large shareholder base. Now, as a large diversified group, this year is the year of capital expenditure in the new energy business, on which, remember, Mukesh Ambani had made a big bang announcement last year of a whopping $10 billion of investments in 3 years. Now, an update on how much has been committed and what lies ahead will be the key to watch out for. Now, the telecom vertical Jio has been preparing for its 5G rollout plan, especially after the spectrum auctions are over, is an important milestone for the group. And also, Jio milestones are important as the company shows signs of steps being taken to prepare for an eventual IPO. Now, the investors in Jio platforms have already been waiting for their value unlocking through a listing. Similar is the case with Reliance Retail with its large investor base. Now, Mukesh Ambani, remember, had announced the IPOs will be done in 5 years in his 2019 AGM, and next 2 years could be quite eventful on the IPO front. Now, big talking point in Reliance Industries is the next gen taking over important executive roles in the group companies. We see the succession plan unfold slowly over the next year. First step, remember, in this direction has already been taken with Akash Ambani taking over as the chairman of Reliance Jio Infocomm. Isha Ambani on retail and Anant on energy to follow. Reliance has taken many steps to be viewed as a truly global company, and therefore the aggressive target of being net carbon zero by 2035 is also in the works. Its progress also adds to the premiumization of its equity and perception building on the global stage. So all eyes on Mukesh Ambani's speech at the AGM.
Nisha, thank you so much for all those details. And of course, you will catch all the updates. The speed starts in 6 hours and 8 minutes. All the updates on CNBC TV18. And of course, the standard disclaimer, Network 18 and TV18, the companies that operate CNBC TV18 are controlled by an independent media trust, of which Reliance Industries is the sole beneficiary. Okay, let's move on now. Prime Minister Narendra Modi yesterday laid the foundation stones of 2 key Suzuki projects in Gujarat, including a battery manufacturing plant with an investment of 7,300 crore rupees. Parikshit Luthra is here to tell us more. Parikshit.
Here in Mahatma Mandir in Ahmedabad, the Prime Minister laid the foundation for 2 future projects of the Suzuki Group. One, an electric vehicle battery manufacturing plant in Hansalpur, Gujarat, which will come up with an investment of 7,300 crores, and a new car manufacturing plant for Maruti Suzuki in Kharkhoda, Haryana, which will come up with an investment of 11,000 crores in phase 1. T. Suzuki, the chairman of the Suzuki Motor Corporation, also announced the setting up of a new company here in India.
Parikshit, thank you so much for joining us with all those updates. And today we are, of course, preparing for what is likely to be a gap-down start for the Indian market. We'll leave you with some good news now. Team India defeated Pakistan in a nail-biting finish to clinch the first match of Asia Cup 2022. Set a target of 148 by Pakistan, India needed 21 runs to win off the last 2 overs. All-rounder Hardik Pandya, who also dismissed 3 Pakistani batsmen earlier in the game, hit 3 boundaries and 6 in the last 12 balls to take India home. The chase was also supported by 35 runs each from Virat Kohli and Ravindra Jadeja. Okay, so some positive news in an environment as far as the markets are concerned, which could be a bit somber for the bulls for sure. So if we look at the Asian markets yet again, they are actually mirroring what we saw in the US markets after some more hawkish comments coming in from the US Fed chair. Hang Seng is down 0.9%. The losses have actually extended. The SGX Nifty, as we speak, is indicating a start deep in the red for our own markets. It's almost a 400-point cut on the SGX Nifty. And with that, we'll take your leave on this edition of Power Breakfast. A lot lined up today, all of it on Bazaar Morning Call. That comes up next.